Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duvall, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's got some rare things for sale, stranger.
Tim Longo. I could have predicted that you were going to use one of his lines. I mean,
I had some others picked out. One from the first week that was something like a viral. I can't remember now because it's buried very deep in my notes. But like something about the viral history of the Umbrella Corporation. That one was pretty good, but I can't even find it, so it's hard.
But you quote the merchant you have for years.
Yes.
What are you buying? What are you selling? You know, like I feel like you say that once a week for the last 20 years or something.
That's probably a little more frequent than real, but I'll try to tone it down. You know,
no.
Obviously, it's made an impact. No, he's a very quotable character because he's so out of left field. We should, of course, say so. We should do two things before we get into this week. One, of course, is we're playing Resident Evil 4. And that's what we're referencing there. If that wasn't clear from my not particularly good accent. And I wanted to thank two writers, Zachary and Ben from Iowa Zaugg, for writing in about the chainsaw guy in the village. So Ben says, I'll do Ben's first. Tim mentioned that it's possible for the chainsaw guy to appear in the opening village. This greatly confused me. One of the reasons I don't like Resident Evil 4 very much is because of the chainsaw guy that in that opening village killing me all the time. I didn't know you could not have him spawn. I just run around hoping the bell rings and the people leave. Thanks, Ben from Iowa Zaugg. I mean, I do that too, but that's just here at home. You know, and then
you didn't have him either, right?
I did not. No, and that's because and I'll actually use this to get into that in a moment. Once I explain how you get it. The subject from Zachary is Chainsaw Ganado in the village. If you pick up the shotgun on the second floor of the farmhouse building in the village, the Chainsaw Ganado will spawn. Works on any difficulty. So excited that you guys are covering my favorite game of all time. Been listening to your pod for years now. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Zachary. So a couple emails at the front this time about that. So I remember when I played this game the first time, and I realized after our discussion last week, it didn't come up because it didn't occur to me that I found that first area very, very challenging, that town area where they go into the church. If you last and, you know, maybe you kill a certain number, whatever it is. And what I ended up finally figuring out to do was, it's not really an exploit. It's still a challenge. But I would stay at the beginning of the village, run up to basically the exit from the area and turn around. You have to kill a few there and then turn around and just shoot at them as they come at me. And that's how I beat it 15 years ago or 16 years ago, and that's how I beat it last week. Because which one do you so you go from the beginning level, you just run through the village to No. I turn as soon as they start coming after me, I turn around and go back to the start of
and just bottleneck them.
And just bottleneck them at that narrow path. And you know, only they can kind of get two almost side by side. So it's still a challenge, but they're all in front of you, right? Instead of they could be coming from anywhere. And I don't know if I don't remember getting the chainsaw guy. Maybe that happened, and maybe that's why I finally settled on this, this approach back 16 years ago. But I did appreciate that. Oh yeah, the reason why it doesn't happen to me is I don't go into the village until everybody's gone.
Yeah, until you run out of ammo, maybe, or something. But
you get pretty low. Definitely get pretty low.
They're not the best at navigating through the village if you're running around in circles a lot and through buildings and out of buildings, and like it does. But yeah, I mean, that's a perfectly that's a good strategy. I love how they sort of like, other than like from Resident Evil 1, they're pretty. Zombies are pretty consistent for the most part, like the type of zombie, or when they get up after not having burned them or whatever, then they get faster, but you have predictability. But
Right.
the fact that these guys kind of like will walk slow and then they'll kind of do a little sprint for a second and then start walking slow again,
duck,
and like
or
they'll like there is just very
they'll
like,
lift up their arm and you're like, is it going to throw that at me? You know, and so you got to worry about that. So
shooting them right at the right time, so they will drop the thing they're about to throw, especially dynamite sticks, and and a lot of shooting him in the knees is my main strategy now. I just shoot him in the knee, and then I go and knife him and save a bunch of ammo.
It's hard to knife them on the GameCube version, believe it or not.
Oh, because you can't look down easily enough.
Yeah, it's partly the sticks, and it's partly I actually feel like it's also just been tuned to be very close. So it just felt very hard to do. As I tried to do it with the first couple of guys, I was like, I should be able to just take these guys out with my knife, and I was getting worked. So I was like, well, maybe not.
When they're on the ground, you mean?
Well, no, I don't remember specifically what I was trying to do, but maybe when they're on the ground, it's easier. I didn't try that.
You have to aim. Yeah. You definitely have to like stand over them and like look down, but the sticks may be different or harder to look down on.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's a little cumbersome, but you just save ammo that way. So that's all.
I'm not worried about burning ammo. Now I've got the merchant. Although I guess he doesn't sell ammo, so maybe I should be worried. Does he sell ammo? I can't remember. Maybe later.
Not yet.
Yeah, he hasn't yet. Maybe he does later.
He might, because he has that whole shop near the lake, which I thought was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
He's got like a whole stand, and what a weird, So should we talk about him now, or
might as well talk about the merchant. We did. He did lead off the show after all. It's such an interesting addition to this French. I mean, it partly, I guess, reinforces the more active nature of the game because he's selling you quality of life items, but also more powerful weapons. In the case of the Punisher, which ties into another thing, they integrate him really well into the rest of the play in that way, which I think is cool. And it also gives a reason for finding all the weird art objects that are through the world. Because you sell them to him, and that's your biggest source of revenue. I mean, you find, piles of money here and there, hundreds of pesetas or whatever, but, you'll find the mask, some golden mask, and it'd be, 10,000 pesetas, or whatever. And that's where the big money is in the art objects for sure, which is cool.
Yeah, when you think about maybe their influences when they kind of were migrating this, as we talked about last episode, forward, and the false starts they had or whatever, but how do you take 1, 2, and 3 and do something different with it? And, economies were definitely coming into more of a fashion around the time. Looting, sort of loot became more important, it seemed like. RPG Lite started surfacing. You see little bits of that coming in all of this, and I had forgotten actually, too, that, well, it's a separate topic, but I was going to talk about the sort of section where you take cover, but we'll come back to that. But yeah, for the merchant, like it's as opposed to RE1, and I believe, actually, I've never played the original 2 and 3, so I won't make that assumption. But at least in RE1, you're handed things the way that level design wanted you to be handed things, and with an economy, you can collect the economy and then spend it on what you want, right? So there's a little bit more player agency and customization there, which is weird for an RE game because it's sort of like,
you'd think it would go against the survival horror goals, right? I mean, to take a much later game, I think of a game that, I think that they were good to take the steps kind of tentatively. Like maybe he never does sell ammo, in which case, like, that's a good choice because they can still limit that. But the game I was going to mention was Rage, which was a id Software game.
Oh, I did not see this coming.
Yeah, well, so they had an economy in their first person shooter, and because they sold ammo in there, they sold everything basically, anything that you would be able to find, you could buy there. The end of the game became just ludicrously easy. I mean, not like, I think it's okay to have it be easier at the end, but you should still feel like there's some challenge on, especially on a a shooter, right? I mean, but it was like, oh, I'll just buy tons of, I don't know, whatever, plasma. I mean, it was BFG and type stuff, and it's just like I just mowed through the end of the game just ridiculously. Like it was to the point where it's like, oh, I'm just going through a bunch of rooms, hitting this button on my weapon, to kill everything, and then going to the next room and doing it again, over and over and over again. And they just fundamentally broke their game because they were careless with their economy. There's too much money in it or something, right? Yeah. And it's a tricky thing to get right. It's very possible to get it wrong, and leave it up to the player to keep the game at a right challenge level for themselves. And that, I mean, why would you do here as a player? I'm like, oh, cool. This will help me get out of some tight spots. And then just like, oh, I guess I've got a lot of it. Just everything's now a tight spot. I'll just use it every room. So it was a miss as far as that went at the end of the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, to your point. I mean, it's a great point that economies and stores, merchants like this are sort of, you would think, the antithesis of survival horror, and they generally are. I mean, it's a tuning of the costs, I guess, for things, because they keep track of, so there is a finite number of enemies, but I think they drop there's essentially loot tables there, because I don't think the enemy, so the variability, I guess they would know from a certain range how much money you're going to have generally. They probably tune that in such a way where they know. But it's still just weird because I think even in the barrels that you destroy, there isn't always the same thing in the barrels. Sometimes there is, but sometimes there isn't. And so I don't know. It's just a weird kind of combination of things that is good for generally, and it's good in general for game design stuff. It's just such a weird, it's just such a fascinating departure to some degree. But it works. I mean, I still feel the enemies take so many, they eat up so many bullets. Like I still feel tense. I still feel, like I need to conserve.
Oh yeah.
Even though there is that economy. So it's a testament to the tuning, which is really a hard thing, to your rage point. That's a really hard thing to do well, as much as I think players take it for granted. That it's like, if something's tuned well, they don't really talk about it, but if it's tuned poorly, you notice, that old chestnut, and, and it's really, so far, this part of the game has been tuned really well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I are probably both finding all the art objects, and like in theory, we have lots of money to spend. I mean, I have upgraded my pistols, I upgraded my handgun all the way that I could, and then I think I've done all but one of the shotgun upgrades, and I can't remember if I've done any of the Punisher upgrades. And I've kind of, I kind of just leaned into using the handgun as much as I possibly could for as long as I could. And then I started to not have very much ammo for it. So I wonder if there's also that kind of progression, because these are the sorts of things that I just can't possibly remember after 16 years. But I'm very curious to see where that goes. And I currently have tons of grenades, as I haven't used one yet.
Oh yeah, no, I've been using those. I've been having fun trying to fool around with those. Probably using them more than I normally would. I generally use them when I get them, just when there's a concentration of them, at least. That's how I kind of took down at least the mandatory chainsaw guy pretty quickly. But the other thing that the merchant gets you, and actually the money economy gets you, that we even talked about. I'll give this very weird kind of out of left field example that we talked about with Ocarina of Time, in the fact that the hearts drop at the end of we had that whole debate about the hearts, and then I was like, why the hell did they just give you the heart? Like, why do you have to go pick it up? It's ridiculous. And then we had a great mail, explaining exactly why that is. And it actually was a good design lesson for me. In this case, it's like the game is going to be harder if you don't engage in the collectibles.
Yes.
But that is your choice. And so you might not be playing on a hard difficulty, but it's like, it's up to you. Cause I feel like the game, I think I would be having a harder time if I ignored. In fact, there was the one section in the farm where I actually did kind of breeze through that quickly to try to save time. And then when I got to the cemetery, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and get all the stuff in the farm because I feel like I need more money or whatever. Right. So, but that was a choice that I made, and it felt better than if they were just forcing me to.
No, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think that, having that option, I do also think this game may tune against what you have a little bit. I don't know. It does feel
dynamic, difficult.
I believe this game does have that. And I think that there's a, Boss Keys / designer's notebook, quite good video about Resident Evil 4 and how it does dynamic difficulty.
It's good for survival horror.
Yeah, good for survival
I would assume,
horror.
right, to keep you right on the edge of your seat, so they kind of tune up and down as needed.
A little bit of a kind of prototypical whatever they called that, story manager, I think, in Left 4 Dead. I can't remember if they called it that or what have you.
AI manager,
the AI director.
AI director. As a sort of partner to this, like about my point about going back to the farm later on, like, which you could do in the mansion, of course, for the most part in Resident Evil 1. So it's sort of a similar structure, but I have really enjoyed the level design again, because obviously there's corridors and then these sort of mini open areas, but there's still sort of like navigation, like you have to, sometimes you got to go onto a roof to get to a place, and then you got to go up a ladder, and then, you can knock ladders down. Like there's sort of some emergent
jumping out of windows stuff to get to places, and like, there's been a number of times
there's
where
a little puzzly aspect to that, you know.
Definitely a lot of places where I've been like, I should be able to get there, and then have to work out like, how can I get there? There was one of those masks, I think, was in a spot where I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, I can see it, right? I can see it through this wall. How am I going to get to that? So it's very cool.
Well, and there's some good old fashioned kind of Resident Evil puzzly kind of stuff with that, but then because it's optional, it's not as sort of punishing, I feel like, like the lock and keys, the minimal lock and keys we've had so far, they're very traditional. In fact, I guess we've really only had 2, are very, like, they're just in your face, right? You're getting 2 halves of a thing and you see it really plainly, and then you get a key or whatever, versus, and then they can allow the mask, that I know the one you're talking about, to be a little harder to find because it's not mandatory. So it's kind of a nice solution to some of their tropes that they've established, but giving it a little bit more usable version. But I just have really enjoyed, like, especially the canyon area coming out of the first merchant after the you're escaping there, like that. There's some cyclical or some circular paths there, figure 8 kind of stuff happening that's pretty good. And so you kind of always have at least a couple options to run away, and the village itself is the same way, the farm, like every area has had some of that variability, which is not my memory of Resident Evil 1. It's pretty much you're in a room, you can run around a table probably, or you can leave the room. I mean, it's like, it's all really,
it's pretty limited.
And they might chase you, or they might not.
That space in particular, I thought was really excellent. At the beginning, there's just a lot coming down at you, and I kind of like just held my ground near the entrance to the area and just was picking them off. And there were guys with dynamite, so you could, if you could time that well, you could shoot the dynamite, and
they fall over the edge too.
Things would fall off. That was kind of cool too, just like as a thing. And then I got into one of the buildings, and I missed a door, right? I didn't see it as I was coming in. And then suddenly I hear somebody moaning in that direction coming at me. And I was like, oh, what? And so it was like, oh, I'm more exposed than I thought I was, right? When I didn't feel exposed before that. So it was very cool, like little reversals, right, of fortune in that area as well. It's like, oh, I felt pretty powerful on top of things, and then I went into a building where I felt like I should have been safe and wasn't, and all of that just played really, really well for me. And I got, it also was really well tuned. I got through it, on the first try. I mean, we're still in the first chapter, so you'd expect that, but it's still, to have that level of tension of like feeling like, oh my God, there's a lot here. And then more show up later, when you go up, if you go up above. And I mean, it just keeps going. And it's like, wow, this is a really long set piece in this area, which is kind of great. I mean, it's I mean, as you had said pre-show, I mean, this game is a really good game. And it's reasons like these that you're just like, wow, yeah, this is really, really, really exquisitely tuned. And it's remarkable that it's like the fourth iteration. You sort of feel like at that point they'd be just like, okay, just finish something, put it out, and we'll hopefully not take too big a hit, and we can go on into the next one and win the fans back or what, like I can definitely see execs get frustrated with the time it took to make this game.
Which I think they did with 6. 6 is a good example of like they just kind of like, they just rinsed and repeated and then didn't really push hard enough and trying to but then the remake of 2 apparently is quite good, right? So it's like they definitely have refound the formula to some degree, but still. And then 7 is like a whole, again, another example of pushing the boundaries, which is
and they've been adding elements, like in 7 and in 2, I guess, where you have persistent characters that are following you through the environment, that might show up anywhere, and are not killable, right? So right. So that's a whole thing I'm leaning into.
I am right on the cusp of getting a VR headset to play 7. Like I'm just really. There's also a VR version of 4, which I don't think we mentioned last time, but that just came out.
Right.
So it's sounds like a kind of a weird version because it's not obviously made for VR, so it's easy, much easier and stuff. So I don't know if I would go that far, but to play it on that. But
well, I don't want to hear about any more helicopter rides. We've had enough scares from our video games without having.
It's probably not the
flickering right in your face.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should consider that. There is a great helicopter ride at the end of 5, though, so I will bring it back around to Resident Evil.
Nice.
There's an amazing, 5 is fun co-op. That's kind of, I think, the big thing there. It's not a great...
I played some of it co-op. I don't think we finished it. I played some of it with Andrew. So
it's not. It's not as revolutionary, but at least that was. But anyway, I think so. I've played, like I said last episode, I played the village section. This is probably my 5th time, I think. And really only as far as I've gotten, I don't know, the village, basically to the castle. So I guess it's chapter 3 I've gotten to, or maybe 4. But so I have replayed this multiple times, and I had trouble in the old versions, and the Wii was the one I got the farthest on, and I think the Wii version of this game is quite good, maybe the best version that I've played so far. So I feel like I know the sort of pros and cons of this section, but for whatever reason, last night as I had finished the lake monster, I was like, I could keep playing for another couple hours. Like this is really good. It's a really good game. Like there's a reason. There's a reason that this is what it is. And I think that there's definitely some quality of life stuff going on in the remake that I'm playing versus what you're playing. But anyway, I'm having a good time. I'm looking forward to finishing it finally.
One of the things that I was reminded of, kind of, a little surprised of, I mean, you sort of have them already with the sort of contextual awesome action button early in the game, but is the the QTEs.
Oh yeah.
I had forgotten that they were in there, and I'd forgotten that I was frustrated by them often, because you'll do actions that you've done. They're not repeatable. First of all, they don't. It's not always the same key presses. If you fail and you do it again, it might be something different. So it's like the first time I was running from the first one, the boulder. You've entered this area. There's one of these weird signs that they have, these symbols on posts with skulls, and I think it literally says, be careful or heads up or something like that when you examine it. Or here we go again, or something like that, like to indicate that this is maybe a trap of some kind. And I was running down there, and I'm smashing. You're smashing the sprint button to run away from this thing, and then suddenly it flashes up, B dodge or something like that, and I totally flubbed it. And I'm like, all right, so I'll do it again. And I'm like, and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm gonna hit B. And it switches to be like L and R, which are the shoulders. Yeah. And I'm like, God, dang you.
Yeah.
I don't love that about QTEs, because I feel that's very off-putting. Like, you can't just learn it. You have to you just have to be paying attention to what they're doing, which it's pretty well tuned. It wasn't like it, but it was like, oh no, it's one of those. Like in God of War, I'm pretty sure the button presses were always the same. Yeah. So if you failed, like, you could get better at it. But this is more of a, like, the skill is not, and to their credit, they're not super long, right? It's not like 6 button presses you're going to have to do. They're all kind of random. It's 1 or 2. But it's still just like, I'd rather know what's coming and be able to do it. I guess that doesn't fit with the type of game that it is, but it is what I like.
Yeah, we don't do it. I feel like that this doesn't happen very much anymore. So it's like, I think everyone learned it's like one of the shortcomings of the game. I feel like in the reissue that I'm playing, I did get the first boulder. There's the second boulder on the way to the lake that happens again, I think. I just completely flubbed that. I know I failed it. They wanted me to hit the triggers, and I hit the bumpers instead, and it still finished. Like, so I don't know what happened. I was like, oh man, I'm dead. And then it's like, oh nope, you're up. It's like, what?
You're okay.
How did? Yeah. So I'm wondering if they like in the remaster, they're like, you know what? Just let them go. Just let them just be fine.
This is,
if they press anything, they're good.
He hit a button, he did something.
Very forgiving. Because I don't, But anyway, they're very, very much. That's one of the things that didn't age well, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm still frustrated by the jittering, laser sight.
Right.
I kind of am thinking I might switch to PC or switch to mouse and keyboard to see if there's any difference there. I think it's going to be the same, of course, but maybe with a mouse I might have a little bit better luck. But I don't know how many shots I've wasted on those blue medallions. It's like,
same here. It's pretty brutal. I definitely am like. And some of them are hard. They're far away, so it's difficult because it's just such a small. It's 10 pixels or something, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to hit this blue circle that's up hanging from the top of a building. Let me get as close as I can so I can try to. I'll fire off like 4 shots before I hit the darn thing.
And it's the usual. Like, I do generally like the hard decisions. Design of those sorts of things, because you're firing bullets at these things and you're not even sure exactly what you're going to get from them. So you're like, either you're a completionist or you're like, I really want with this gun that he keeps telling me about. But it's like shooting a bullet is just like you're putting your life at risk with every shot you miss. You're like, oh, that one hurts. I missed again. Oh, that could have been a headshot on them zombies. So it's a very good tension of like really like milking the tension from just shooting a silly medallion.
From this very, like, an action you're going to do a billion times, right? They're wringing something out of them again and again. Yeah, those collectibles I had remembered. Of course, when I ran into that, when you first get the sign about them or whatever. I mean, the funny thing is like, it's right there in front of you. It's very clear. What you might not notice is, like, in the barn, there's a guy working, and so, like, you're attracted to this thing because it's blue, like, it sticks out, and we should probably, go to the art direction next, because that's something you wanted to talk about. But it's blue. The sign is blue on the tree, and then there's a medallion hanging as well. So you kind of, like, your eye is drawn there. You might not see the threat, and you, like, walk right up to it, and you're like, oh, and then it encourages. It's basically encouraging you to just shoot, which of course draws any zombies in the area, or any of the ganados in the area to you. So it's like, it's very, it feels like a wink, from a designer, like, ha, I did the thing to you, like, you weren't paying attention, and you lost track of the fact that you're in a really dangerous place,
distracted.
and
the shiny thing, you got distracted, and you paid for it. I think these enemies, I really think they are brilliant design, because they are this great mixture of zombie and human. And to your point, like, when you come into the farm specifically, they're just farming. Like, they're just people, mm-hmm. like, if you don't listening, because they actually make very specific sounds of them, like shoveling, pitchforking hay or something. But so they're doing stuff. They're shoveling cow manure. But they blend in well, so you're not, unless you're looking, you don't see them right away. But they're just going about their business, right? They're mm-hmm. doing busy work until they're like, oh, intruder, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna come and throw things at you. It's like, mm-hmm. so it's just a really interesting tension versus, like, RE1 or whatever, or traditional zombies, where generally, they're going to be coming at you. Right,
they have one job.
And they're going to.
They have brains work.
Right, and they're going to do it slowly, but they are going to do it. Versus, like, these modal states, and these guys throw things, and they attack you still, and they'll grab you. They get up, like, you can shoot them in different locations, and they react differently. They can hit each other. Like, there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on. There's nothing more satisfying than shooting a guy with a dynamite lit that drops in the group of them, where there's like 5 of them go up, at once, and so that's another good reason to bottleneck.
It's also a thing that they've done really well, is that they have really well balanced the spaces in terms of, I'm just thinking of pure rendering performance, to be able to accommodate those numbers. Without doing a lot of spawning tricks or anything like that. It's not, I mean, a lot of these locations, they're just all there. The canyon is a great example, I think, of, like, there is a point at which I do think they spawn some more in.
I think they spawn. There is a couple moments, I don't know what triggers them, because you can finish a level and it says you've killed X number of Y enemies. But I know I left the level with nothing alive, so I'm like, what? Right. Where were the other enemies that I was supposed to kill? So anyway, I don't know how it's worked sometimes, but or if they count birds or something.
Yeah, it's not, that part is not super clear, for sure. I don't know. I just find that that's just a real tightrope to walk, and it feels very performant, and I'm playing. I'm playing the GameCube version, so this is, probably the worst performing version to play. And it still performs beautifully for me.
It's a very polished.
It really is. They really nailed it, and they really just have the right complexity. But to do as much as they do with those characters, on a GameCube, and to be able to put that many on, is really quite something to me, I think. Really, really well done. So,
well, speaking of the art direction, I don't too much to say yet, but I think I definitely want to point out a couple of things, because I think, we played the remake of RE1, which obviously had quite good art direction too, and a very consistent, and Resident Evil for its as a franchise is very, very like they know what they are for the most part. I think 4 for me though, though I have admitted that I didn't play the original 2 and 3, so I don't know how those fare, but if I go from 1 to 4 as an example, I feel like 4 has always, even compared to 5 and and such, that I feel like 4 was, for me, is still the I think the cream of the crop for them when it comes to art direction. Like yes, it is a very brown game. But what I will say to that is it's so consistent, and it's got such a horror film. In fact, there's a film grain effect, if you, at least in my version. I don't remember if they had that in the GameCube version, but there's a film grain effect that they put as a full screen effect over the game that gives it that sort of like, the staticky kind of look, the gribbly bit of it. So it makes it look very, very cinematic, and it's got a very consistent art direction, color direction, to the degree where it almost feels like color grading in a lot of modern games still do, or do color grading today, but films are obviously notorious for it. Lord of the Rings being like a really classic example. And the color grading is just very consistent for the village, at least. I think it might start changing after we leave the village, but this whole section just is so pure and so specific and so clear what they're trying to get from it, and it feels like this oppressive, country town that is off in the middle of nowhere that you would be super scared of if you were there. And it feels like a, Evil Dead movie or something like that, or, some of the old, like you talked about in the first episode, some of those old horror movies. And it just feels very, it's just very, very, very well done, and very consistent. And yes, it's gotten criticism over being too brown over the years, but I'm choosing to kind of take the opposite side of that, where it's like more of just, knowing what they're going for and being consistent with it, because it feels like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or, just feels like, it's like, you don't want to be there. Like, let's get out of here as soon as we can, kind of thing. Just really, really good art direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was also a good technical reason, for that as well at the time. And
palette wise,
like that there's something to do with the hardware of the era that makes, that what it's best able to do, and that extends, I think, into the PS3 era, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I'll have to spend some time tracking that down, because I think that's definitely a true thing of the time, that there's a reason why, and it might have to do with how colors were packed, or it might have to do. I don't want to speak too out of turn about it, because I don't really remember, but I do know it's a thing, right? That there is actually a technical reason. I'm not a rendering engineer, so I don't specifically remember, because I didn't have to. But I do know it was a thing, and I'll just have to spend some time.
Well, yeah, no, that's true. I'm sure there's obviously good, like they do a good job with set dressing as well, and kind of like having the beyond the beyond the fourth wall sort of, or, outside of the gameplay space kind of elements, right? So it makes it feel like they have a lot of fences and a lot of things that kind of block you in, but it feels very motivated. But as a game that we've played that is a contemporary to this game, and actually very close to home for this game, is Devil May Cry, which I would say, in the same space at least, had, chose a different kind of art direction.
Yeah.
And a very contrasting one, and so, and, more still kind of oppressive and moody, of course, but there's still a lot more color, a lot more flashiness. And this just, the chainsaw guy is a great example, right? Like, just very like, it's just a dude with a sack over his head, man, and he's coming at you, and he like, and it's somehow scarier than if it were like a monster. And my secondary point to this is, I actually think, as far as RE goes, and I haven't played the whole series, but I've played, a fair number of hours of the series over the years. This one also has at least so far, I think it probably goes crazier later on, I've heard, but it's also a pretty grounded RE game, like even the lake monster, which I'm sure we'll get to, is sort of like, it's not a giant alligator. It looks like, or like in RE, it's like a giant spider or a giant snake. Is like, why is there a giant snake here? Like they kind of there's some experiments or whatever, but here it's like, no, this is like a genetic anomaly, like a mutation or something. It's like this creature is just gross and weird enough where you're like, yeah, I guess this could be a thing. Like it's a cryptid. It's not just an alligator that's been scaled up.
Right,
it's
right.
like,
yeah, it does. It feels like it moves a lot like an alligator. In the water, but it doesn't. It isn't clearly an alligator. And of course, when it opens its mouth, it's got different sorts of teeth. The shape of the mouth is different from an alligator. And of course, it's got the writhing tentacle stuff from the phage, from the Las Plagas phage. So we're going to have that to look forward to. Who knows what will happen to our man, Leon. He is,
he's infected.
Yeah, so that's a story bit that we haven't touched on at all. I had made a note about Luis, what was his name? Sarah, I think. They're kind of starting to introduce these other characters who are part of the story as actual characters instead of just like backstory that you find in notes. There's actually these other people that you're going to run into. Which is not really true of the first one. You did run into Lisa, obviously, but and the thing at the end, but for the most part, there's not like actual characters that certainly that speak. For example, it's more here there's real characters. It seems like there's multiple agendas going on. Like they're like, well, we're more worried about if this guy Luis, gets it back out to the world, that would be way worse. He's way more the priority than this American, and things like that. And you're like, wow, I'm not even the thing that they're most worried about, and it's, this is sort of starting to come through. It's a very wild sort of thing. I like it quite a lot.
And they've already introduced two big baddies, right? Yeah. Characters as well, with when they infect Leon and stuff. And you see the Lord Sadler, is that his name? The one with the cloak or the hood, or I don't know, maybe he's not Lord Sadler, but anyway, you see this guy in this purple robe who's some sort of priest, and then you see the big tall dude Mendez, which is very like Nemesis like in a
and
way.
Also like Rasputin as well is who I think.
Oh, he is totally Rasputin. You're totally right. Yeah. And he's got, in fact,
when I was looking up his name, I was like Rasputin guy in Resident Evil 4, and it took me right to his page.
Right. Yeah, so he's definitely inspired by that. Yeah, you can see, and then there's the leader, the guy in the robe is very cult leader like, right? And they actually reference the group, which I had forgotten about, as Los Illuminatos. There's an Illuminati kind of thing going on. But then the Ava, is that Ava her name? The one that if you go, I think you only see her if you go backwards after Mendez punches you around. Did you get that to play? Or do you remember that?
Think so, no.
Oh, okay. Ava, so if you know that scene in the house after the canyon where Mendez comes in and he grabs you by the throat and he sees that you've been infected and he throws you down. He goes back into the room you came from. If you go back into the room where he went into, then he's in there and he punches you again. He's like, I told you, leave me alone.
Oh, that's right. I did that the first time I played it. Yeah.
And then she, this woman in a red dress on this zip line comes in and she distracts him and shoots him, and then she zips away. In a very, her red dress is ridiculous, but they're not the best in that regard. But she is from 2. Is she someone Leon knows? I don't know who Ava is.
Oh yeah, she's definitely gonna show up later. Is it Ada?
Ada, maybe it's Ada. Yeah.
Ada Wong, I think.
Yeah, that must be it. I know she's part of the whole canon, and I think And Leon actually says that he recognizes her, and then I know she comes up later. But my point is that's an optional scene. Like not everyone will see that. And it's a little like, and then I think she's giving you notes throughout the game too. Ada is. She's like some of the notes.
She was first in 2, and she's in 4, 6, and then a bunch of other random.
So so she was partner. Maybe she was his partner in 2, which is because he was in 2, right? And he even references his first and last day on the job as a cop was in Raccoon City,
the
which
PD.
I think is 2.
Yeah. I'm actually I'm playing. He has an alternate outfit that you can choose.
Oh, really?
If you can choose, but I chose that, and he's in his Raccoon City PD, SWAT gear or whatever. That's very funny. He's walking around, and there was one thing where he said, I'm not. He says, I think he says to Luis, he says something like, "I'm not a cop anymore," or something like that. And I'm looking at him, and he's saying this, and he's dressed in this cop uniform. It's very funny.
Yeah, that's good.
If you've picked that outfit, it's hilarious. It's almost like they knew that there was going to be some funny moments. I feel like Japanese developers are willing to do that way more than we are as far as doing something strange like that, where it's like, some of these things are not going to play the same if you're dressed differently. So
right. They have fun with that. That was always, I mean, that's like Dead Rising really embraced that. That's, I like that series too. He was in RE2. That's when he showed up. And then,
I feel like I played the start of that game and then and didn't really play any further. I don't remember why, but who knows? It's so long ago that I don't remember it at all. Might have been just when I moved here and I was like, didn't actually have lots of time for that sort of thing. So I don't feel like there was a lot else that we wanted to get to this time. We've touched on the new enemy types, especially the chainsaw guy. I guess that's kind of the big. Are there any?
You want to talk about the lake monster battle?
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we should talk about that battle. Yeah, maybe we'll finish there. So there's a cutscene. It's, I assume, missable, where you can go to an overlook and see them taking the other police officer's body and throwing it into the lake. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. So you can kind of go to this overlook, and I assume that's skippable. And you'll see the second policeman's body being thrown into the water, and then, after the boats take off, this thing comes from underneath the water. And I do remember playing this the first time and being like, "Oh my God, this thing's huge!" And thinking, if that's what I'm getting here in Chapter 1. Where is this going? And it was very, I remember it being, in some ways, I feel like their most memorable monster kind of comes really early in that way, but there may be things I'm forgetting. So we'll see if that holds up. I do know there's another one that's quite memorable that I can remember. And might be in Chapter 2 or 3. I don't remember when it happens.
There's also a painting on the wall in the house that you go to of the lake. Did you see that? And you look at it, and he says, that's a nice looking lake. I wonder if it's close by." And it's the lake. So it's kind of a little nice little nugget of foreshadowing there.
Yeah. So this is an interesting boss battle. It's very much a set piece. Leon's got to get across this lake. He's seen, of course, that there's a monster in it, so that's kind of strange. It's kind of funny because I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just stay as close as humanly possible to the shoreline, where this thing can't come from the depths, presumably, to get to me. So there's, I'm not sure a lot of the framing or physics make a lot of sense, but and in the ensuing cutscene, when the thing finally comes after him, he snags his anchor on it when his boat is upset. And then the thing just now you're in it, and it tows you around the lake. For me, that was often challenging because it'll directly tow you towards, it has specific animations for these floating obstacles, tree stumps that have been however they got into the lake, but they're like these big balls of tree roots, and it'll just drag like and zigzag through them, and you're having to like control the boat to navigate around them, and inevitably I'd get tossed from the boat at that point because I just couldn't time it right. Like I'm not even sure how you were supposed to do that. You said you didn't have that in yours.
Yeah, I didn't. There was not an obstacle in my way. I mean, once I was connected to him, he would just swim around, and then he would turn around and then show his mouth, and I'd try to throw a harpoon inside, but there were no stumps in the way for me at all. So I don't know if I got lucky or if it's the remake where they fixed this, but it definitely, I did it on the first try. I didn't die.
Yeah.
I got super lucky. I do remember on the Wii and the GameCube version, I do remember having trouble with it though. So maybe I was surprised last night when I was playing and I was like, I did it.
Yeah. I mean, it took me at least 3 tries. It might have been 4. It wasn't a high number, but
it doesn't have a health bar, right? So that you don't even know how well you're doing, or did you?
Yeah, you don't know how you're doing against it. You just know how well you are doing.
Yeah.
Right, and each time you get thrown from the boat, you take some damage, and when you basically run out of health, it's quite good. It does different sort of cameras for trying to get back to the boat. There's one where you have the monster's point of view, and it's swimming up after him, and you're like, oh man, that's me, like look how small I am. It's a great moment in that sequence, and reason enough to fall out of the boat, honestly. And you're just mashing the button to get, it's sort of a QTE where the challenge is just mash the button a ton. You can just stop. Like there were times where I was like, well, there was one time I was like, oh, I'm out of health, I'm going to die anyway. So I just was like, well, I'll just not swim because where am I going to go? It's obvious I'm going to die here. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, I did love the sort of reading the monster as it turns back on you. So it'll like drag you, it'll dive, and then it's basically turn around under the water to come back and bite at you as it comes out.
Yeah.
And it could knock you out there as well, which was a cool thing.
I thought it was a very tension-filled Jaws inspired, kind of like, just getting hooked to it, having it be much more powerful than you, pulling the boat, turning the boat, and the sort of like timing, it's very, it's Jaws, right? I mean,
yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it's just a terrifying, I don't know, like a big, deep, gross brown lake with this crazy monster in it, and you're going across in a whatever outboard motorboat.
Outboard rowboat, really.
Rowboat, it's just like all many nightmares put together. It's a little bit Friday the 13th too, right? Like the original, with the boat, with the lake.
Of the end. Yeah, definitely.
Just dark lakes where you can't see the bottom. Yes, yeah.
I mean, they're definitely pulling from that sort of strain of American horror cinema, for sure. I mean, the Chainsaw Guy, obviously, right? I mean, that's very much the original. Tobe Hooper, Chainsaw Massacre, and even the color palette, as you pointed out earlier, really comes from that as well. So yeah, it's a whole, I mean, those things look like, rip off leather faces. So super creepy.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was a good place to stop too for the session. It felt like a good culmination, and that did end up being the end of chapter 1. So we're now good to go, but
perfect place to break for sure. Yeah. Yep. How are you doing with shooting? Like that's one of the things that it shows at the end of each chapter, like your overall hit rate and things like that.
I'm hovering around 75%.
Yeah, that's where I am too.
Yeah. And as soon as I just go for the knee, arrow to the knee, as quickly as I can is my general. And they don't always go down, but often they do. So I just this is how I tend to play survival horrors. Like I over index on conserving ammo, even though they've tuned it to not need me to. So I do end up having more than I need often, but I do find I'm running out here and there still. So I tend to also specialize. Like I'm upgrading things, I'm upgrading the pistol and the Punisher and the shotgun as fully as I can. And I actually haven't bought any other weapons yet.
Right.
I just like focus on 2 weapons and go deep rather than broad. So
Right.
I haven't even filled my inventory yet. So,
I have them mostly because of grenades.
Yeah.
Because I've got so many grenades. In fact, I've started selling the flash grenades back to him because I'm carrying those around. I'm like, I'm probably not going to use those.
They're pretty effective, though. I mean, take a whole. Yeah, the good thing about the flash ones is the flash grenades is that you can look at the flash and it's not like Rainbow Six where you have to look away or you flash yourself.
Right.
So you can just throw them and like it just takes, 6, 8, enemies will just be stunned. And they're good for getting away if you're in trouble, but they're also good for just shotgunning a bunch of folks. So, which, that sentence is a little terrifying to say, but
video games.
They're zombies. They're bad folks.
Yeah, they've killed a lot of people, as we know from the very, very first building we went into. So we're in the clear morally here. I think we're okay.
Yeah,
I think we're okay. Let's turn to email. Let's see. I'm going to scroll way down because I think I've got one here we haven't read yet. Yeah. And I gave you a couple. I can go to others. We did read a couple off the top. Thanks to sending that to devgameclub@gmail.com. Did we have a question this time? I feel like we were going to ask people something, and now, whether or not the guns are worth more after they're upgraded if you're going to sell them back. That was a question we had because we were like, it's unfortunate because we upgraded the pistol and then we got a different pistol in the Punisher.
I hate obsolete upgrades. You devote that time. Yeah. So
you spend your resources and you're like, oh man, what was the point of that? Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I don't think it's great, but if people know whether that changes the price, I'd appreciate it for some of our Resident Evil 4 experts out there. I know there's some people who play this
greatest game,
annually.
Favorite game of all times. That's
yes.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I hear that sometimes. You want to go ahead and read that first email?
Yes. Subject is "A Man Chooses?" Question mark from Tim. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yes.
Not you, but
all right.
Tim.
Yep. No. Good. With you,
you're forgetful, but you're not.
You never know what kind of shenanigans you're up to. Dear, you could have written this as me and then made me read it, and then it.
Yep.
You never know.
It's true.
Dear DGC.
Tim, by the way, is an anagram of Tim.
Okay. Now closer. A clue. When BioShock released, I remember reading a lot of criticism correctly identifying its several themes: ideology, the illusion of player agency, and family. But I don't remember anyone noting its remarkable thematic coherence. Because ideology is a creature of abstraction just as much as is a game, which limits at least agency and perception, it was a brilliant move to nest the game's meta-commentary on player agency within portrayals of ideologies gone wrong. If, moreover, ideology is a tribalism of ideas, consonant with the electronic tribalism of the new media predicted by McLuhan, which Brett will illuminate me on that. Okay.
The media is the message. Yep.
Got it.
Is the message.
Family may be regarded as the tribalism of the body. A man chooses, in quotes, but his choice is fettered. A man chooses, says the ideologue, as he chooses death, recalling the association of death and abstraction made in the opening chapters of Genesis. Rapture, Columbia, and the Vox Populi struck me as pretty crude ideological caricatures, but this doesn't bother me since I assume the target to be ideology as such, rather than any particular real-world political view. Brett described one of my previous messages as a hand grenade, which he cheerfully chucked at Tim. I'm afraid I've supplied more ammunition. Keep up the good work, Tim, if that is your real name.
If that is your real name. I could not track down which one I might have referred to as he sent.
I have a vague memory.
Yeah. I do remember saying that. I just don't remember what the connection was. This is the email I referred to a couple weeks ago when I was saying we had one talking about maybe the background. Fortunately, I think that the Vox Populi in particular that aspect doesn't hold up. Having now played the DLC, I think they basically apologize for that portrayal in a way. They do a story thing, which makes a character's choice there not be the same as it was. Like it recontextualizes why something happened in a way that I think softens it. And it felt like at the same time they were trying to deepen it, but also like, yeah, okay, we screwed up. We maybe went too far, with this character.
Interesting. Cohen?
It's it's in the sequel in Infinite.
Oh, so okay. I don't know.
It's this character. Yeah, this character Daisy, Daisy Fitzroy, I think is her name, is the leader of this group. There's some universe hopping that happens, multiple universes, etc. Anyway, in one of the universes they hop into, they have turned the tide, and they have basically led a revolution, and it's a very violent revolution. And there's a scene which is a really important scene for Elizabeth's character, where she does something pretty violent herself, and that whole scene, when I played it originally, I was like, ugh, I didn't like any of that. Like, that was, I'm not sure I agree that this is how this would happen. So yeah, anyway, I can't really, I don't want to it would take too much to unpack all of it, but I do remember at the time thinking, I'm not sure this is accurate to some degree. And they, like I said, in the DLC, you get to revisit that scene from a different perspective, and it recontextualizes it to really change what happened. And I thought that was an apology, and B, a little unfair, honestly. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. You were going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we talked about this some during the series for sure. So it's probably redundant, but I think because BioShock was so good, and they got so many things right, and they got so close to doing things. So, and again, just full transparency, they did way better than I would do. So I'm not throwing stones necessarily. I think that because it's sort of become such a legendary game, and it did dabble in ideological themes so directly, that I feel like we have given it more credit than it deserves over the years, because it at least attempted. I don't actually, I think we give them too much credit. I don't think they were thinking this stuff. I don't think they were thinking this stuff through to the degree that people think they were. I think they got close to some things, they approached some things, and then we're filling in the blanks as the audience a little more than we should, or not that we should. I mean, everyone can fill in the blanks as much as they want, right? It's you're consuming art, so you should interpret it the way you want. But I just don't know if they were fully mapped it out in such a way where they're really hitting super meta commentary stuff on like, oh, it's a game, and so you don't have choice, but you do have choice, but we're going to take choice away. And I don't know. I think they wanted some binary choices, and they gave them to you, and it kind of like, well, it kind of worked, kind of didn't, but that was the point. No, I don't think. Anyway, I'm being super cynical, but I'm kind of anyway.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the mail, Tim. I have one here from Baron ? The subject is BioShock Turning Point. This one I will note, I edited a bit for time. We definitely get, with games that touch, or particularly touchstones for people, we end up sometimes getting extremely long emails, which is why I still haven't responded to that Final Fantasy one. because it is so long that it's going to take me a while.
We should just do an episode just of that one mail.
Just that one mail. Anyway, hello, Tim and Brett. You are currently playing my all-time favorite game, BioShock. This obviously came in a little while ago, and I can't help but write in to share my love for it. Apologies in advance for the long mail. Like I said, edited a bit, but would you kindly read it? In 2007, young Baron, that is not my real name, was a very passionate and avid gamer, but one that kept to Nintendo titles exclusively. My only experience with shooters was Resident Evil 4 and Metroid Prime. I enjoyed single-player experiences with exploration and puzzles to accompany the action parts, and was under the impression that shooters were just action-packed games that didn't have what I loved about games. One fateful day, my cousin gave me his old Xbox 360 that had a red ring of death, and I got repaired with some games. I quickly scrolled through the games and shoved them all aside, Call of Duty, Halo, etc. Not much there for me, but among the wreckage, I found this weird game with this big monstrosity on the cover, and I got instantly hooked and intrigued. The name did not say much to me, and I thought that I was going to be able to control this big submarine abomination, which has no gun in its hand, so I gave it a go. My God, the moment the game started, I was enchanted. The opening cinematic, which, by the way, you don't conveniently land next to the lighthouse, but actually the player hijacks the plane on the exact coordinates to bring it down by opening the gift box with a "would you kindly" order inside. All part of Fontaine's plan to get you there after they kidnap you to the outside world. Yeah, this is actually also explained in that BioShock Infinite DLC, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's so much in that DLC. It's a lot. Anyway, the Rapture presentation and the first Splicer encounter made me forget that I was playing a first-person game. I was immersed, no pun intended. I couldn't put it down. The gameplay was addictive and nothing like I had ever played before. The controls, the puzzles, the art, the suspense, the diaries, the messed up characters, everything felt to me like playing a Zelda for adults. Having just turned 18, it was what I needed. I'm so happy that you guys are playing it, and it's so fun to hear your takes on it. Game that marked a turning point in my life. Thank you both for all you do, and remember, a man chooses, a slave obeys. Sincerely, Daniel, my real name. So there you go. If that is your real name, Daniel, your real name. It's a weird kind of middle name. A bit of a flourish. Daniel, my real name. Daniel, my real name. I wonder what his last name is. Anyway.
Yeah.
There's me riffing. Yeah, so it's there was a little bit more to the mail, but I had to definitely trim it because it was almost twice as long. But thank you for that. And appreciate it, Baron. Yeah, glad we got to revisit that game. I really enjoyed seeing it again. So let's do, I guess, one more. Let's hit one more. I think I gave you one more.
Does that line, a man chooses, the slave obeys, do they say that in the game? Or
yeah, Ryan says it.
Yeah, of course he does. Oh boy.
I mean, that's what he's saying when you're ramming a golf club into his face.
Oh, that's right. I didn't. Yeah, that's right. I don't remember exactly where it played.
The man chooses.
Yeah. It's a very white perspective, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Email number 2. Halloween? ? From Tanner. Hey guys, my name is Tanner, and I hail from Tempe, Arizona. Is it Tempe? Is that how you pronounce it?
Tempe, I think.
Tempe. That's right. Tempe didn't sound right. That's a food. Tempe. Though we don't really get seasons here, I've been gearing up for Halloween by playing some horror games. Lately, I've been playing through some of the older Fatal Frame or Project Zero games. I don't know what Project Zero is. Normally,
I think that's the Japanese name for Fatal Frame.
Oh, I see. I would say he say Fatal Frame or Project Zero. Okay.
Right. I think, yeah.
That's why the or. Normally, I have such a hard time with horror games because I get too scared and sometimes dread playing them. Something about the mystery of these games and the pacing keeps me going, even when they force me to go into the worst places I could ever imagine myself walking into. Have you ever been too scared or dreaded a game? And if so, what are the features of horror games that make you want to push through? Also, Fatal Frame 5, a game that lived and died on WiiU, is being re-released for pretty much everything this month if you ever wanted to give the series a try. Thanks for all you do and happy Halloween. Tanner.
Yeah. So do you have? I mean, I definitely have had games where they filled me with dread. I don't know that I've been. I don't think I've ever been too scared to finish a game. Oh, that might not be true. I might have to look up the name of it. There was something I think I got as on the PlayStation 3 that was part of the plus that I had as a download, and I got into it a ways and was like, nope. I'm done. I don't think I finished it. The play was very wasn't great, and it became just purely horror. Like that, I was just like, it was just I'd rather just watch a movie at this point. Although it was very creepy, and a part of why I put it down was like, oh my god, this is just my heart's racing all the time. And for me, PT was this way. Not that I didn't finish it, but that I was like, okay, I'm going to play this during the day with the lights on and the shades open. Like, I do not want to be in the dark playing this game. So that was one. And then Alien Isolation was the same way in that is such a tension-inducing game.
I need to go back to that game.
In both cases, a lot of it is the audio environment is just terrifying. In Alien, there are sounds that like the doors make that are very similar to the sounds that the alien will make when it's nearby. So you're constantly walking past doors that are opening because you're near them, and they're off to the side, and you're hearing like outgassing from hydraulics or something like that. And it's just terrifying. Like, it's just like this constant oral assault of just being totally terrified just walking around in the environment. And then of course the alien then shows up, and you're like hiding in a locker, and it's coming and it's looking for you, and you can see it through the bars, and you're just like you know, and sometimes it opens the door and kills you, and it's like, oh, thank God, because I don't think I could have taken the tension much longer. So yeah, that is definitely a game that was a lot. Like, I don't think I could play it again. I think once was enough. So yeah, I don't know about you. Do you have games that scare you to that degree?
No, I'm trying to think. Like, I've never had one scare me to a degree where I couldn't finish it. I usually don't finish a survival or a horror game because it just falls off my plate per se. I definitely will. But I mean, I will say sort of a half version of that is I need to be in the right frame of mind and the right sort of situation to play. Like, I don't feel like I can play anytime I want to. Like, I have to like gear up for it and like, okay, I know I'm going to go through a lot. Do I want to play right now? And then I, inevitably will try and do. But I don't stop because of the fright. I don't know if I told this story off air or not, but because I watched The Exorcist so young in my life, I think I just was ruined forever after to not really be scared by much. I spent a lot of time in the wilderness alone in the pitch black, and I think I've just come to terms with, well, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So the games that I think get me the closest though, like I definitely need to go back to Alien because I enjoyed what I played, but I didn't play probably, anywhere. I think it's a pretty long game. So I think I'm still pretty early.
It is pretty long.
But the psychological horror stuff tends to be the ones that do it the most for me versus like the survival horror or zombie stuff or scary stuff, like the ones that are really more like creepy, from like a psychology perspective. I think PT would be some of that for me. It's not about like slashing, slasher kind of stuff. But this is going to be so out of left field. You'll never guess what I'm about to say, but the game that I think has scared me the most,
Mortimer and the Riddles of the Medallion.
Yeah. That's definitely a certain kind of fear comes from that game. But that's not what I was going to say. No, it's actually Minecraft.
Whoa.
Yeah. So playing with my daughter back, when she was younger, and even playing by myself, when you have dug down because it's a systemic game, right? And it's a seed-based game, so it's procedural anyway. So you really never know what's going to happen. It's a survival game, so there's the survival aspect. But because of the survival aspect, you're generally fairly powerless for a lot of the game. And when nighttime comes, or darkness comes, it's terrifying. And so when you're digging into and you find an underground cave, very deep cave, you just decided to dig straight down, and inevitably there's a cave below you, and it is pitch black down there. You run out of torches, you cannot see. And then you hear an Enderman, or you hear a
creep or whatever.
The creeper, creeper.
Creeper. I think it's creeper. Yeah.
Or spiders or witches or any of the things down there. Even a skeleton can freak you out because you may not have weapons, or so it's like it's just the unknown, right? You're down there and it's like, oh man, and then your stuff's down there if you die, and so then you have to like start all over.
You're gonna have to go back.
Yeah, and it's like and those caves are just the worst. They're just so terrifying. So I know that's not what he was thinking, but it's still, to me, like meeting those creatures down there in the dark is, when you feel like Steve is he's just such a dude. Like he can't do anything, So anyway, that's my most terrifying moments come from Minecraft. Wow. Survival mode.
Admittedly, you're right. I was not expecting
You never saw that one coming.
I did not see that one coming. That's a good one though. I totally see what you mean. Like I definitely remember having terrifying moments. Normally I was more terrified like being above ground and being like, oh, I managed to get into my house, but now we have to rebuild it all tomorrow because they just blew up the side of it 1 billion times, right? Or whatever, which is a different sort of thing, but it's still like good audio work too, of just knowing those things are near, and that something bad's about to happen.
And there's the audio works good, but there's also something about the tension in survival games, especially. And I get this a little bit from Valheim too, which I think is another brilliant survival game. Not quite as scary, but there definitely are scary moments. But the power dynamic or power curve in survival games is key, right? And so in Minecraft, the farther you are from home, and the more tense it gets, right? Because the stakes are higher if you die. So like if you're just exploring and then it gets nighttime and you're like, I better build something above ground really quick because they're going to come, but it's just so far away from your bed or whatever, or whatever it is. Like it's just like the survival games do a good job at building that tension over time as you explore. So it's kind of a brilliant genre.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Totally agree. I mean, I was quite enjoying Dragon Quest Builders, which I stepped away from because I started a new job for a real taskmaster. And I when I went back to it, I haven't been able to play it because on my TV in my living room, where I'm a little bit more comfortable, I can't read the text anymore. It was only like when I was downstairs, I had my glasses and the TV was close because the text is so small. So I'm like, oh, I can't get back to it, but I need to be able to read everything because I can't remember all the controls. Right. But it had a lot of those moments, even though it's not a procedural game. They still have like a day-night cycle, and you'll be out in an area where you've maybe pushed your luck a little too far, and you're trying to get back to your transport back to your where your base is, because there's like these portals and things that you can go through. So it's pretty similar and interesting in that way. So fun game. I enjoyed it, but unfortunately the text is too darn small. Anyway. Thank you for that. We are always, of course, on the lookout for new reviews. Always appreciate those, generally to the Apple Podcast infrastructure, but, wherever you want to send them. And if we don't happen to get them, I'm subscribed to the Apple ones. Just drop us a line and let us know where that was. And we would love to read them on the air. We enjoy that. And, of course, the email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com. On Twitter at DevGameClub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Are you a man still finding yourself in control of the situation, as it were?
I am not in Control, but I am playing Control. Yeah, I spent a good chunk of time fighting a refrigerator most recently, and failed. So
oh no!
I think I'm gonna put that on the back burner and come back to it later when I get more powers.
Was that another kitchen joke? Were you punning there?
No, I was. Well, you're not technically fighting the refrigerator, but yeah. So no, I'm playing. I'm on my way back to.
Oh right, the refrigerator. Is that the one where he has to stare at it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a real thing. I'm not. That's and then there's the boss. Oh, man,
that is so good.
Comes up. Yeah, that's a great sequence. The boss fight itself, I'm not a fan of. I think it's not a great boss fight, but it's yeah. So I was, and I didn't know that you've lost like the currency if you die, at 10% or something. So
yes,
I died a lot there. Anyway, yeah, no, but I'm on my way back to meet up with my brother. I don't know what's happening
Dylan.
With that. Yeah, Dylan. So yeah, still playing, still enjoying it, and I'll be playing shortly.
Cool. Well, we'll find out if Dylan went electric on twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers, and our logo is, of course, by Mark Garcia. Have fun killing folks, but letting them live? Well, I don't even know where I'm going. I was trying to use some of these other things I had from it this week. Anyway, and good night.
Good night.